The alien council chamber was a vast hall of metal and stone, filled with shadows and the echo of quiet voices. Rows of alien leaders sat in silence, their many eyes fixed on the glowing screen at the center. The image on the screen showed humans, small groups of them training, walking, building, moving with strange energy and stubborn will. Some of the aliens tilted their heads with mild interest, others sneered with cold disdain, and at last one voice rose above the rest, sharp and filled with mocking pride. It was the alien general, his armor dark and heavy, his skin marked with deep scars of countless battles, his eyes narrow and filled with fire. He stood and laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the chamber like metal breaking. He raised his hand and pointed toward the humans on the screen, his voice filled with contempt as he spoke. "Humans are weak," he declared. "Humans are fragile. They cannot survive without shelter and tools. Their bones are thin. Their skin tears easily. They are prey. Pretending to be predators, they live by chance, not by strength." The chamber rumbled with low voices. Some of the alien leaders nodded in agreement. Others remained silent. The general continued, his words sharp like blades. "Look at them. Look at their children. What chance do they have? If they were placed on a true world, a world of storms and poison, a world where only the strong may live, those children would perish in moments. They cannot endure what we endure. They cannot face what we face. Humans are a joke among warriors. Their history is filled with accidents of survival, not with true strength." His words carried weight, for he was a general known across many systems, his victories legendary, his battles countless, his pride unmatched. He had fought on burning moons, on frozen worlds, against creatures that shattered armies. Yet he still stood, scarred but unbeaten. And so, when he mocked humanity, many believed his words. Many found themselves agreeing in silence, nodding slowly, whispering to each other, "Yes, humans are fragile. Yes, humans are soft. Yes, humans cannot endure what we endure." But not all were convinced. Among the council sat an elder, older than most, his skin pale and his eyes deep. He listened without interruption, his hands folded, his gaze steady. When the general's voice finally fell silent, the elder spoke with calm tone. "Perhaps," he said, "your words are true. Perhaps humans are weak. Perhaps they cannot survive as we do. But words are not proof. Mockery is not truth. If we believe them fragile, then let us test them. Let us see with our own eyes whether they can endure or not." The chamber stirred, whispers rising again. The general turned with sharp glare, his pride wounded. "A test?" he asked. "What kind of test?" The elder answered with simple voice. "We have worlds that no species has claimed. Worlds filled with storms, poison, and endless danger. Worlds we call Deathworlds. They kill all who set foot on them. Even our strongest warriors fear them. Let us see if humans can endure such a place. Let us send not their warriors, not their leaders, but their children." The council gasped, eyes wide, whispers turning to shouts. "Children." The elder repeated, "Yes, their children. For if even their children can endure, then perhaps humans are not weak at all." The general laughed again, his voice shaking the chamber, the sound of cruel amusement filling every corner. "Children," he said. "Children will not last a day. They will not last an hour. You will see them fall. You will see their weakness, and then all doubt will end. Humanity will be shown for what it truly is. Fragile prey pretending to be hunters." He raised his head high, his laughter still echoing, his pride strong, his certainty unshaken. But the elder only nodded, his calm gaze never leaving the general. "Then it is settled," he said. "We will watch, we will judge, and the truth will be known. No more words, no more boasts, only proof." The council slowly agreed, some with excitement, some with fear, some with cold curiosity. The chamber filled with the sound of voices rising and falling. The decision made, the challenge set, the fate of human children, soon to be tested on a world that none dared to claim. In the shadows of the chamber, unseen by most, a silent figure listened, a figure who carried the memories of battles past, who knew the strange nature of humans better than most. His eyes narrowed as he whispered to himself, "The general may laugh now, but he does not know what is coming. He does not know the truth of humanity. He does not know that weakness and strength are not what they seem. The glowing screen still showed humans moving, working, laughing, their children running across fields with small hands reaching for the sky, their voices filled with life, their faces filled with energy. The general saw weakness, the elders saw mystery, the silent figure saw something else, something deeper. The chamber grew colder, the silence heavier, for a test had been declared, and soon the galaxy itself would witness the truth of human endurance. The general sat back with cruel smile, his heart certain of victory, his pride strong as iron. He believed he had won before the test had even begun, yet in the stillness of the chamber, unseen threads of fate began to weave. A path had opened, a story had begun, and no one in the hall truly knew how it would end. The council chamber was silent once more. The decision had been made, and across the stars the preparations began. The elder had spoken of a world that no empire claimed, a world that was feared even by the strongest, a place whispered of in ancient records, a place marked on star maps not with names of pride, but with warnings, red marks of death. And it was to this world the human children would be sent, their fate to be judged by the galaxy itself. The Deathworld was unlike any ordinary planet. It orbited a wild sun that flared with violent storms, waves of radiation striking its surface like invisible fire. Its skies were thick with clouds of ash and smoke, storms of endless thunder rolling without end, lightning tearing the heavens like claws of a beast. The land was carved by rivers of poison, forests of twisted trees stretched in all directions, their branches heavy with venomous fruit, their roots pulsing with strange light. And in the shadows creatures waited, their eyes glowing, their teeth sharp enough to tear through metal, and their hunger endless. Even the air was cruel, heavy with toxins that burned the lungs, yet not enough to kill instantly. Rather it lingered, slow and choking, forcing every breath to be a fight. The soil was alive with insects that carried venom in their tiny fangs, their stings bringing fever and pain, their swarms darkening the sky like clouds of death. And still, the world was not silent, for at night the ground itself moved, great beasts crawling from beneath the earth, their roars shaking the mountains there, scales harder than stone, their claws leaving trails of fire as they hunted. For generations the council had deemed this planet cursed, its name spoken only in fear. Soldiers had been sent long ago, mighty armies with shining weapons, and not one had returned. Machines had been dropped, drones and scouts built to endure the harshest storms, and they too had fallen silent, their signals lost, their metal bones buried beneath the poisoned earth. This was the world chosen for humanity's trial. This was the stage on which their children would be tested, and in the shadows of the chamber the alien general smiled, certain that the test would end in failure. When word reached the humans, fear spread like fire. Parents wept, voices rose in anger. Many demanded that the council stop this madness. Many cried that their children were not tools, not pawns, but living souls. Yet among them stood others who spoke with steady voices, who said that humanity had always been tested, that humanity had always been forced to face what others feared, that every trial in history had shaped them into survivors, and that perhaps this trial too was meant to be faced. And when the call for volunteers was given, there were parents who stepped forward, their faces pale, but their eyes burning with belief. The alien council was surprised. They had expected resistance. They had expected humanity to refuse, but instead they saw fathers and mothers stand and say, "Take our children. They will not fail. They will not bend. They will not break." And behind them the children themselves stood, their eyes wide but their voices steady. They did not understand the full weight of the challenge, yet they felt the pride of their kind. They felt the fire of their blood. And when they were told of the death world, they did not shrink. They asked instead how they might fight, how they might endure, how they might win. The alien general laughed again when he heard this, mocking the foolish pride of the humans, his voice sharp as he declared that no child could survive on a world where trained soldiers had perished. Yet deep inside his laughter carried the faintest edge of unease, for he saw something strange in the eyes of those children, not fear, not weakness, but a quiet defiance, a spark that he could not name, a spark that unsettled even him, though he would never admit it. The ships were prepared, small vessels crafted to descend through violent storms, their hulls layered with shields, their engines burning bright, and inside them the human children were gathered, dressed not in armor, but in simple suits, carrying only basic supplies, food and water for a short time, knives and rope, fire starters and blankets, nothing more. No great weapons, no mighty machines, only the bare tools of survival. The council had demanded it so, for they wished to see what humans would do with almost nothing. They wished to strip away every advantage and witness the truth of the species beneath. The day of departure came, the skies of the council world dark with looming clouds, as if the universe itself held its breath. The alien leaders gathered in high towers, their eyes fixed on the fleet. The general stood with arms crossed, his gaze cold, his pride still unshaken. The elder watched in silence, his face calm but unreadable, and among the shadows the silent figure, who had spoken to no one, remained still, his thoughts hidden, his eyes fixed not on the ships but on the children within. As the vessels lifted from the ground, the children looked out of the windows. They saw stars burning. They saw the endless dark of space. Some felt fear in their hearts, but others felt excitement, adventure, the unknown calling. They held hands. They whispered promises. They swore to protect each other. They swore to return. They swore that no world would claim them. And though their voices were small, their words carried a weight greater than they knew. The journey was long and filled with silence, the hum of engines their only companion. And then the Deathworld appeared before them, a sphere of black clouds and crimson storms, lightning flashing across its surface like veins of fire, oceans boiling with heat, mountains jagged and sharp, a world alive with fury. The children pressed against the glass, their eyes wide, some trembling, some whispering prayers, others smiling with nervous courage. And in that moment, as the ships began their descent, the galaxy itself seemed to lean closer, watching, waiting, hungry for the answer. The first waves of storm struck the hull, lightning wrapping around the ships like chains, thunder shaking every bone. Yet the vessels pushed on, fire streaming behind them, shields straining, alarms crying, and still they descended, through clouds of ash, through winds that screamed like demons, through skies that tore themselves apart with rage, and at last they broke through. At last they saw the ground below, forests of twisted trees stretching far, rivers glowing with green poison, beasts moving in the shadows, wings rising against the storm, teeth flashing in the dark. The Deathworld welcomed them, not with silence, but with a roar. The ships landed with trembling impact, dirt and smoke rising, branches snapping, insects swarming, and the doors opened with slow creak. The children stepped out into air heavy with venom, the ground hot beneath their feet, the smell of rot and blood in their noses, the sounds of distant growls in their ears, and for a moment they stood frozen, their hearts racing, their breath burning. Yet none turned back, none ran. They walked forward together, small hands clutching simple tools, eyes wide and shining, and the world watched, and the council waited, and the general smiled his cruel smile. The storm raged above the children as they stood on the strange ground of the Deathworld. Lightning streaked across the sky with wild fury. The sound of thunder rolled like the voice of a giant beast. The air was thick and heavy, filled with burning smoke and the smell of poison. Each breath was sharp in their lungs, and the heat pressed against their small bodies with relentless weight. Yet they did not fall. They did not flee. They held close to one another, and their eyes searched the land, with both fear and wonder. The first child stepped forward, his shoes sinking into the soil that squirmed with tiny creatures. Insects crawled over his boots, their bodies glowing faint green, their stingers raised. Yet he moved with steady steps, brushing them away with a stick he had carried. His heart pounded in his chest, but he whispered to the others to follow, his voice trembling yet brave. And they obeyed, walking behind him, their shadows stretching long against the flashes of lightning. Together they reached the edge of the twisted forest. Trees taller than towers loomed over them, their branches bent like claws, their leaves wide and dripping with thick liquid. Some leaves glowed faintly in the dark, pulsing as though alive. The children paused, unsure. The air beneath the trees was darker, colder, filled with whispers of movement. Yet one girl, with sharp eyes, studied the glowing leaves. She picked up a stone and threw it against the trunk of a tree. The impact shook the branches, and drops of liquid fell to the ground. where they sizzled and smoked, burning holes in the dirt. The children gasped. The girl nodded, and said they must avoid the glowing leaves. The forest was alive with sound. Strange cries echoed in the distance. Heavy footsteps moved through the shadows. Unseen eyes watched from above, and the children clung to each other as they pressed forward. The boy with the stick led them, brushing aside branches, testing the ground with careful steps. Behind him the others carried what little they had. Ropes tied to their waists, bags with food and water, blankets wrapped around their shoulders. They were small, fragile in the vast forest. Yet each step was filled with stubborn fire. As the storm faded into steady rain, the children searched for a place to rest. Their bodies were tired, their throats dry, and hunger began to gnaw at them. They gathered near a cluster of rocks that formed a small cave, the entrance narrow, the inside dark and dry. They crawled inside and sat close together, their bodies shivering, their hearts beating fast, and for the first time since stepping onto the world, they felt a small sense of safety. The eldest among them, a boy with calm eyes, said they must think, they must plan. He told them that fear would not keep them alive, only action would. So they spoke in hushed voices. They decided to take turns keeping watch. They decided to gather food when the storm passed. They decided to build stronger shelter, not with fear, but with courage. They would fight the world together, and they swore again to protect each other. When the rain slowed, two children stepped out to explore. One carried rope, the other carried a small knife. They moved slowly through the forest, eyes sharp, ears alert. They found small fruits on low branches, red and bright. They looked sweet, but remembering the warning of the glowing leaves, they did not eat them at once. Instead, they carried them back. The girl who had tested the glowing leaves before suggested a trial. She cut a piece and placed it on the ground. Within moments, insects crawled over it, eating without harm. Then she touched the fruit with her tongue, tasting only a small bit. Her lips tingled, but she did not grow ill. She smiled faintly, saying the fruit might be safe, and together they shared it. Their hunger eased just enough to give them strength. Night fell fast on the Deathworld. The sky turned black, stars hidden behind endless clouds. Strange lights glowed in the distance, red and blue, moving across the hills like living fire. The ground shook with the steps of giant beasts. Roars shook the trees, and the children huddled in their cave, fear heavy in their hearts. Yet when a monstrous cry rose close by, the eldest boy whispered that they must not panic. They must be quiet. They must endure. They held their breath as heavy footsteps passed, shadows looming at the cave mouth, glowing eyes staring for long moments before fading into the dark. The children trembled, but they had survived their first night. When the morning came, the world seemed even more cruel. The air was thick with swarms of insects. The sun shone weakly through the clouds, casting sickly light across the land. Yet the children rose from the cave with weary determination. They began their work. One group gathered branches and vines to build stronger walls. Another searched for more fruit. Another fetched water from a stream, though the water glowed faintly green. The clever girl boiled it with heated stones until the glow faded, making it safe enough to drink. And with each task the children grew more skilled, their hands learning, their minds adapting, their fear turning into quiet resolve. The alien council watched through their screens, their eyes wide, their voices hushed. They had expected screams. They had expected collapse. They had expected death within hours. Yet what they saw was different. They saw children using wit instead of strength. They saw cooperation instead of despair. They saw something strange and unsettling, something that even the general could not dismiss, though his mouth twisted with denial, his laughter quieter than before. On the second night, the storm returned with greater fury. Lightning set the trees ablaze. Fire spread quickly, smoke choking the air, and the children rushed from their cave, their voices loud with fear. Yet instead of scattering, they held together. They tied ropes around their waists. They carried the smallest on their backs, and they ran toward the river. The water hissed with poison, but it slowed the fire. And there they stayed, their bodies pressed close, their faces covered with cloth, breathing through fabric, enduring until the storm passed. And when the fire faded, they returned to their cave, burned and coughing, yet alive. As days passed, the children began to change. Their steps became sure, their eyes sharp, their hands clever. They built shelters of stone and wood. They dug small pits for traps. They learned which insects could be eaten for food, which plants could heal cuts and stings, and their laughter returned, soft at first, then stronger, echoing through the twisted forest like a strange song. The death world had not broken them. It had forced them to grow, and each day they grew more. The alien general still sneered, saying luck would run out, saying the world had yet to show its true teeth. Yet deep inside he felt unease, for he had seen warriors break within a day. He had seen armies destroyed by the storms. Yet these were only children, and they still stood. He clenched his fists in silence, his pride cracking, his laughter fading, as the elder beside him whispered, "Watch closely, for the trial has only just begun." The children had begun to believe they could shape this hostile land to their will. Their small shelters stood against the endless rain. Their traps caught crawling beasts for food. Their laughter returned each evening like a fragile light in the darkness. But the death world was alive. It was not a silent enemy. It was a raging force, and it had only been watching, waiting, biding its fury until the moment it would strike. The morning began with quiet skies, only distant clouds whispering across the horizon, the air heavy but calm. The children stepped out of their cave with steady steps. They carried baskets of woven vines. They gathered fruits from the safe trees. They boiled water with hot stones. They spoke with bright voices. But beneath the calm ground the world stirred. The insects scattered. The birds of twisted wings fled to the sky. Even the trees trembled. And then the earth roared. A quake rolled through the forest, shaking the children to their knees, splitting the soil like torn cloth. And from the cracks rose a swarm of creatures unlike any they had seen. They were long and covered in black scales. Their eyes burned red, their mouths filled with sharp fangs dripping with glowing venom. Their bodies hissed as they moved, thousands of them pouring from the earth like rivers of living shadow. The children screamed in fear, their hearts beating fast, but they did not scatter. The eldest boy shouted for them to climb the rocks, to reach higher ground, to hold the ropes tied around their waists, and they obeyed, scrambling up as the creatures rushed. Beneath, their tails whipping, their jaws snapping, their venom burning holes in the stones. The swarm passed, but not without loss. One boy had slipped, his leg caught by the jaws of a beast, his cry echoing through the forest. Yet before the creature could drag him away, the girl, with sharp eyes, leapt down, driving her small knife into its glowing eye. The beast shrieked and fell, and together they pulled the boy free, his leg bleeding, his face pale. But he lived. They carried him to safety, tearing cloth from their blankets to bind the wound, pressing leaves to slow the poison, whispering courage into his ear, refusing to let him fall. The alien council watched in silence, their many eyes wide, their voices hushed, for they had seen swarms like this devour soldiers in moments. They had seen entire armies broken by the venom of these beasts. Yet the children endured. They had fought with nothing but knives and courage, and still they stood, bruised and bloodied but alive. The elder leaned forward, his gaze deep, while the general clenched his jaw, his laughter silent, his pride struck once more. Days passed, and the world struck again. The storms returned with fury. Winds tore through the forest, ripping trees from their roots. Rain poured in endless sheets, turning the ground into rivers of mud. The children huddled in their shelters, their walls shaking, their roofs collapsing. Yet they did not surrender. They tied branches together. They used vines as ropes. They rebuilt even as the storm raged, their small hands raw, their bodies shivering, but their spirits fierce. When lightning struck and set the trees ablaze, they carried water in their baskets, pouring it over the flames, choking on smoke, but refusing to run. On the third night the predators came, eyes glowing in the dark, larger than horses, their bodies sleek and covered with fur like steel, their claws long and curved, their teeth sharp as blades. They prowled around the shelters, their growls deep and low. The children felt their hearts freeze. Yet the eldest boy whispered for silence. He told them to light fire, to hold the flames high, to make the beasts fear. And they did, lifting branches wrapped in burning cloth, waving them toward the shadows. The beasts growled louder, circling closer, their eyes unblinking. Then with sudden fury they leapt. But the fire met them. The children screamed with defiance, thrusting flames into their faces. The beast snarled, retreating into the dark, leaving only their echoing cries behind. The council chamber was no longer filled with smug smiles. The alien leaders leaned closer to the screens, their whispers sharp, their eyes unsettled, for they had seen creatures that broke hardened soldiers flee before human children. They had seen fire and courage turn aside death, and they did not understand. The general still mocked with trembling voice, saying it was luck, saying it would not last. Yet even he felt the weight of unease, growing heavy in his chest. The wounded boy grew weaker with each day, the venom spreading through his veins, his body burning with fever. The children watched in fear, but the sharp-eyed girl refused to give him up. She searched the forest with desperate eyes, tasting plants with tiny bites, pressing leaves against her skin to test their burn, until she found one that cooled the fire in her veins. She crushed it and placed it against the wound. The boy's fever slowly eased, his breath steadied, his eyes opened once more, and the children cheered softly, their hope renewed, their faith in each other unshaken. The world did not rest. Each day brought new trials. Rivers of poison flooded their paths. Insects swarmed in clouds that darkened the sky. Creatures with wings of bone swooped from above. Yet the children learned. They used smoke to drive the insects away. They built nets from vines to catch the winged beasts. They dug channels to guide the poison rivers aside. And each challenge became another lesson. Each strike of the world another chance to grow stronger. They were no longer simply surviving. They were adapting. They were claiming the land piece by piece. At night their laughter returned again, louder now, fiercer. Not the fragile laughter of fear, but the proud laughter of defiance. It echoed through the forest like a song of children who refused to bow, a song of humanity's spirit rising against the world itself. And though the alien general pressed his lips tight, though he shook his head in denial, he could not silence the truth that grew clearer with every day. The children were not failing. The children were not weak. The children were enduring where warriors had fallen. The elder turned to the general with quiet eyes and said, "You see, strength is not always in the muscle. Strength is not always in the bone. Sometimes strength is in the spirit that refuses to break. Sometimes strength is in the will to rise after every fall." The general said nothing, his silence heavier than any words, his pride cracking, his heart uncertain, his mind haunted by the sight of children standing tall on a world that had broken his armies. The world had struck with fury, with storm and poison and beast, yet the children endured, scarred and weary, but unbroken. And as the alien council watched, they began to whisper not of weakness, but of wonder. For in the smallest of humans they saw something dangerous, something powerful, something that no other species carried, the unyielding fire of survival. And so the death world raged on, but so did the children, step by step, day by day, their footprints marking the soil, their voices filling the air, and in every storm, in every shadow, in every roar of the earth, they answered not with fear, but with courage. And the galaxy leaned closer, knowing the trial was far from over, knowing the story of humanity had only begun. The death world had struck with its storms and its beasts and its poison. Yet the children had not fallen. They had endured with fire in their hearts. They had faced each trial with small hands and clever minds. And though their bodies bore scars, their spirits grew sharper with each day. Where once they trembled, now they stood tall. Where once they whispered in fear, now they spoke with steady voices. And in the cruelest land, they began not only to survive, but to thrive. The forest that had seemed like endless shadows slowly revealed secrets. The girl with sharp eyes noticed that some of the glowing vines could be bent into rope stronger than anything they had brought. The boy with calm eyes discovered that the shells of dead creatures could be shaped into bowls and plates. Another child learned that the venom of insects, when mixed with certain leaves, lost its poison and instead numbed pain. And with every discovery the children grew. Their camp no longer a fragile shelter of branches, but a small village of stone and wood. Smoke rising from fires that never died, laughter echoing in the dark nights. The predators that prowled the shadows no longer struck with fear as before. The children had learned their ways. They built pits with sharpened stakes. They wove nets of vine and bone. They placed fires along the edge of their camp, and when the beasts came with glowing eyes and growling voices, they were met not with panic, but with strategy. Some were caught, some were driven away, and their hides became warm blankets. Their bones became tools. Their meat became food. Each enemy turned into strength, each danger into resource. The children were becoming hunters of the death world itself. Water once poisoned now flowed safely through clever design. The children dug channels lined with stone. They placed fire-heated rocks into pools to burn away toxins. They planted seeds from the fruits they had tested, watching small green shoots grow in safe soil. And though the land was cruel, it yielded. The children ate not only from the forest, but from the small gardens they made. And for the first time on that world, life was not only taken but given back. The death world had never known such defiance. At night they gathered around their fires, their faces glowing in the red light, their voices telling stories of home, stories of parents and villages and skies without storms, their words weaving courage into their hearts. Some played with sticks like swords, others sang songs they remembered. Their laughter was no longer fragile but strong, a sound that rose against the thunder, a sound that said, "We are here. We are alive. We will not bow." The alien council watched in silence, their screens glowing with images of human children transforming the unclaimed world. Many of the leaders no longer sneered. Many no longer whispered of weakness. Instead, they spoke of wonder, of confusion, of disbelief. They had seen armies fall. They had seen warriors shatter. Yet children endured. Children built. Children thrived. The elder sat with calm eyes, his voice soft as he said, "This is the truth of humanity. This is the fire that grows in there." Young. The general clenched his fists, his jaw tight, his laughter long gone. He muttered words of denial, saying this would not last, saying the world would break them yet, saying they had only been lucky. But his voice trembled, his pride cracked, for in his heart he had never seen such will, never seen such stubborn fire. He felt fear that he would never speak aloud, fear of a species that turned every trial into strength, fear of children who walked where warriors had died. The children themselves did not know the eyes that watched them. They did not know the council. They did not care for the pride of the general. They only knew the world around them. They only knew the bond they shared. Each day they woke with purpose. Each night they rested with trust. They had become a family beyond family, bound not by blood but by survival. Each child guarding the others, each child carrying the weight of all. And in their unity lay the secret of their strength. One day the children followed the river beyond the hills. There they found caves carved deep into the stone. Inside were crystals that glowed with faint blue light, their warmth driving away the choking air, their glow guiding the way in the dark. The children carried the crystals back, placing them around their camp. The light kept away insects, the warmth eased their nights, and their camp shone like a star in the endless forest, a beacon of defiance, a mark of belonging. The beasts of the world grew wary. No longer did they rush the camp as before. They lingered in shadows, their glowing eyes watching with unease, for they felt something shift. The prey they had once hunted now stood as rivals, no longer weak, no longer fragile. The land itself seemed to pause, the storms roaring less, the trees swaying slower, as though even the death world began to recognize the children as part of its fury, not victims but challengers. The elder in the council spoke again, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Do you see now?" he asked. "Do you understand?" The general turned away in silence, unable to answer, for in the firelit faces of the children he saw not weakness but destiny. And though he hated the thought, though his pride screamed against it, he knew deep within that no other species could have endured this way. No other young could have thrived in such fury. Weeks passed into months. The children grew taller, their bodies stronger, their eyes sharper, their hands skilled. They wore clothes made of hides. They carried tools made of bone and stone. They lived as part of the land, not against it. And though the world struck again and again, they answered with courage. They answered with unity. They answered with laughter. And the death world became less a curse and more a home, a place where they belonged. In the silence of night, one child looked at the stars through a break in the clouds. He whispered that perhaps the world had chosen them. Perhaps they were meant to prove something greater. His words carried into the hearts of the others. They nodded in silence, for though they did not know the eyes that watched from across the galaxy, they felt the weight of destiny pressing upon them. They felt the truth that their trial was not just for survival, but for something far beyond. And so the children thrived. Their small camp became a village. Their laughter became a song, their fire a beacon, their courage a weapon sharper than any blade. And the world that had broken armies now trembled before them. The cruel death world that had been feared for generations now bent slowly to the will of human children. And the galaxy itself leaned closer, unable to turn away, unable to deny the truth of what it saw. The chamber of the alien council was filled with heavy silence as the glowing screens displayed the thriving children on the death world. The council members leaned forward, their many eyes reflecting the firelight of human camps. They watched the children laugh and build. They watched them fight and heal. They watched them rise where armies had fallen. Whispers spread across the chamber like wind through ancient ruins. Some voices spoke of wonder, others of fear, but none denied what they saw. None could turn away from the truth before them. The alien general sat stiff in his seat, his armor gleaming under the dim light, his hands clenched so tightly that the metal creaked, his jaw set hard, his eyes burning with pride and fury. Once he had laughed loudly. Once he had mocked humans as fragile and weak. Once he had declared that their children would perish within hours. But now his laughter was gone. Now his voice was silent. Now his heart trembled though he fought to hide it. The images on the screen tore at his pride like blades. Each smile of the children, each act of clever survival, each roar of defiance against the world felt like a wound he could not heal. The elder turned toward him, his calm gaze steady, his voice soft yet sharp. "You spoke of weakness," he said. "You spoke of failure. You spoke of certain death. Yet look, they endure, they thrive. Do you not see the truth before your eyes?" The general snapped his head away, his voice rising in anger. "This is chance. This is luck. This is nothing but tricks. The world has not shown its full fury. The world will break them yet. Do not speak to me of strength when all I see are children clinging to life by chance." The chamber stirred with unease, the voices of the council low, some agreeing with the elder, some fearing the wrath of the general. But none could deny the images. None could deny the fire in those small faces. None could deny the laughter that echoed even in the midst of storm and shadow. The elder's eyes glowed faintly. He whispered again, "Luck does not build shelters from stone. Luck does not tame fire. Luck does not heal wounds with leaves. Luck does not plant seeds in poisoned earth and turn it to garden. Luck does not endure, only will endures, and they have will greater than any I have ever seen." The general slammed his fist against the table, the sound like thunder, his voice sharp as a blade. "Enough," he roared. "You all stare at children as if they are legends. You all whisper as if they are gods. But I tell you this, they are not stronger than us. They are not greater than us. They are only clever prey playing hunter. The world will strike again, harder, fiercer, and when it does you will see them fall. You will see their true nature, and then you will remember my words." But even as he spoke his voice shook, his eyes betrayed the storm within him, for in the depths of his pride he felt a crack. He felt doubt gnawing at him. He remembered warriors screaming as storms broke their armor. He remembered soldiers crushed by beasts that rose from the earth. He remembered battlefields littered with the dead. And yet these children, untrained, unequipped, unarmed, endured. He had no answer for it, no weapon against it. And the more he denied, the heavier the weight pressed upon him. The council members began to murmur, some with fear, some with awe. One asked if the children should be removed. Another whispered that perhaps they should be protected. Another dared to say that perhaps humanity was not to be mocked, but to be respected. The general growled at their words, his pride wounded deeper with every sound. He could not bear the thought of respect for those he had called weak. He could not bear the thought of bowing to those he had mocked. His heart burned with rage. But beneath it grew something darker, something he had never known before, the bitter taste of fear. Far across the galaxy the children continued their lives, unaware of the storm and the council. They hunted with sharpened spears. They built walls of stone and wood. They painted marks upon the rocks to tell their stories. They sang songs around their fires that echoed against the mountains. Their wounds healed into scars. Their small hands grew stronger, their eyes sharper, their laughter deeper. They had become the spirit of the death world itself, fierce and unyielding, and their every step sent ripples through the hearts of those who watched. The elder whispered once more, "If their children endure such a world, what then of their warriors? What then of their people as a whole? What then of humanity itself?" The general turned his burning eyes toward him, his lips curling with hatred. "Do not speak of that," he growled. "Do not dare." But the words hung heavy in the air. The question lingered like smoke, and the council members shivered at the thought. The general rose from his seat, his tall frame casting long shadows across the hall. His voice thundered once more. "I will not bow. I will not yield. Humanity is weak. They will fall, and when they do, I will be proven right. Remember my words. Remember them when their bodies lie broken on that cursed world." And he stormed from the chamber, his armor clashing with every step, his fury echoing through the halls. But in his heart his pride was breaking, his certainty crumbling, and he could not silence the doubt that gnawed within him. In the silence that followed, the elder remained still, his eyes soft, his lips faintly curved. He whispered quietly, "He fears them, though he will never say it. He fears them, and that is the beginning of respect." The council members exchanged glances, uneasy and thoughtful, for they too felt the truth in his words. And though the general roared, though he denied, though he mocked, the children thrived still, and the death world had become their stage, a stage upon which the destiny of humanity was being written with fire and courage. And so the general's breaking point neared. Each day he watched the screens. Each day he told himself they would fail. Each day he waited for the moment of collapse. Yet each day they grew stronger. Each day they laughed louder. Each day they thrived deeper. And with every heartbeat of their survival, another crack split his pride. Another wound opened in his heart, until he no longer laughed, until he no longer mocked, until his silence betrayed the storm within. And the council saw it, and the elders saw it, and the galaxy itself saw it. The pride of the mighty general breaking before the fire of human children. The death world had been meant as a grave for the human children. It had been chosen as a place where storms tore the sky, where poison flowed in rivers, where beasts prowled with endless hunger. Yet instead of death, the world had given birth to something the galaxy had never seen. It had given birth to human courage shaped by fury, to human unity carved by danger, to human will hardened by fire. And as the days turned to weeks and the weeks into months, the children no longer appeared as fragile souls lost in cruelty. They appeared as guardians of a land that once rejected all life. The children stood taller now, their bodies lean and strong, the movement sure, their hands skilled with tools of bone and stone, their shelters no longer frail huts, but walls of rock and towers of wood. Their camps shone with the light of crystals. Their gardens grew in patches of safe soil. Their fires never died. Their laughter was louder than thunder, and their songs carried across the hills like banners of defiance. The death world had not broken them. It had crowned them. The alien council could not look away. Their eyes locked on the glowing screens, their whispers filling the chamber with awe and dread. Many leaders who once mocked humanity now spoke with trembling voices, saying that no species had ever done this. No child of any race had ever endured such fury. Some declared the trial should end. Some said the children must be brought back. Some said humanity must be honored, for if children could shape such a world, then the groan of their kind would be unstoppable. And though pride still chained the general's tongue, his silence was more damning than his words, for his laughter had long since vanished. The elder rose in the council, his voice calm but heavy with power. He said that the test had been completed. He said that no further proof was needed. He said that the galaxy had witnessed the truth of humanity, that even in the smallest of their kind there was fire unyielding. He declared that from this day forward humanity could never again be called weak, never again mocked as fragile, never again dismissed as prey. Instead, they must be named what they had proven to be: survivors, builders, guardians. And the council stirred with thunder of agreement, for even those who doubted could not deny the truth before their eyes. Far on the death world the children climbed the mountains, their eyes set on the horizon, their voices filled with laughter. They no longer saw the land as a curse. They saw it as their home. They spoke of rivers as if they were friends. They named the beasts they hunted. They carved marks into stone to tell the story of their trials. They held each other, not as frightened souls, but as family forged in fire, and their hearts burned with pride that no storm could drown, no beast could devour, no poison could silence. When the council sent ships to retrieve them, the sky above the Deathworld shook with the thunder of engines. The children looked up with wide eyes, for they had forgotten the sound of machines. Some felt joy, some felt sorrow, for this was their world now, a place they had claimed. Yet when the ships landed and the doors opened, the children stood together, their heads high, their hands gripping the tools they had made. They stepped forward not as fragile survivors, but as keepers of the land. The alien soldiers who had come to fetch them hesitated, their armor gleaming, their weapons sharp, yet their steps faltered, for the sight before them was not of helpless children, but of warriors in spirit, young yet unbreakable, and in their eyes the soldiers saw something they could not understand, a light fiercer than any they had known. The children greeted them without fear, without bowing, with simple words of pride. We endured, we thrived, we belong. The elder smiled when the report reached him, his eyes glowing with quiet triumph, while the general sat in silence, his pride shattered, his heart heavy with the truth he could no longer deny. He had mocked humanity. He had called them weak. He had laughed at their children. Yet now those same children stood as legends before the galaxy, and he bowed his head, not in respect but in defeat, for he knew that the fire of humanity would burn forever, and he feared it. The council declared humanity as guardians. They said that if children could thrive on a death world, then humanity as a whole was destined to guard what others could not, to protect worlds where others failed, to endure where others fled. And though the humans themselves were unaware of these titles, their children had already proven them true. Their laughter still echoed across the poisoned skies. Their small footprints marked the soil of the cursed world. Their voices sang songs that turned fear into courage, and their story was carved into the heart of the galaxy. The children boarded the ships at last, carrying with them stones carved with their stories, seeds from their gardens, hides from the beasts they had defeated, crystals that glowed with the warmth of the land. They carried not only memories, but proof that they had belonged, proof that even in the cruelest world life had bent to their will. The ships rose through the stormy skies. The death world roared with thunder, but the children laughed, their voices rising above the storm as if to tell the world that they were not its victims, they were its conquerors. The screens in the council chamber flickered as the ships departed. The alien leaders stood in silence, their eyes wide, their hearts shaken, for they had witnessed history. They had witnessed the rise of humanity. And though fear lingered, though pride resisted, they knew that nothing would ever be the same, for in the children of Earth they had seen not weakness, but the shape of a future where humanity would stand unchallenged. And the elder whispered once more, "Remember this day, remember what we have seen, remember the fire that lives in them, for it will shape the galaxy itself." And so the story closed not with death but with life, not with despair but with triumph. The children who had been sent to die on a cursed world had returned as symbols of endurance, as proof of a truth greater than any weapon. Humanity does not only survive, humanity thrives. Humanity grows stronger through trial. And even in the smallest of their kind the spirit of guardians burned bright. The death world had been conquered not by armies, not by machines, but by children, and the galaxy would never forget.